I think we need to understand what the dream really was. I mean, the anger is there. It's real. It's partly there because there's some people in this country who regret losing power. It's partly there because some people in this country have been disappointed by the changes because they haven't got the kind of progress out of the society that they hoped for. But I think that if we understand the Mandela legacy as this kind of very fuzzy thing in which everybody rushes around forgiving each other, then we will misunderstand what he was all about. He started his political career, incidentally, as a very angry young man who didn't want to work with white people, who didn't want to work with the oppressor, as he called it. And he realized as he went along that you can disagree with people and you can oppose people politically, but you can actually recognize their humanity and you can listen to them, you can reach out to them. And I think that's what we need in the society at the moment. I don't think anybody should stop feeling the way they do, but I think they need to understand that we have to live in this place together. And I think that was one of his great legacies.
What is the role of the media, Ben, in polarizing this country? Do you get a sense that we have a media that assists in this process somehow?
I'm afraid so. You know, I don't think we need to have a good news media. I don't think that's what it's about. But I think that when the media spend most of their time yelling once again, rather than trying to encourage people to understand, there's nothing wrong with vigorous opposition. It's what the media are there for. But you have to put it in context. You have to explain the background. And you also, just as they have to do in politics, you also have to understand the person you're writing about. And I think very often the media talk to each other and they don't talk enough to other South Africans and they don't listen enough to other South Africans. And yes, it's very important for media to be independent and it's very important for media to challenge power, but it's also important for media to tell balanced stories and to tell the whole story.
Is the key problem maybe media ownership and that we should look at changing that a little bit in South Africa?
No, I don't think it's an ownership problem. I mean, one of the great ironies is that very often papers which are very hostile to a government mainly elected by black people, those papers are actually owned by black people. I don't think it's an ownership problem. I think it's a kind of culture that's developed in our journalism, and I'm a former journalist myself, and it's a culture where you don't do the hard yards of actually going out there and listening to South Africans and reflecting what they have to say. It's much easier to sit at your desk ranting. And I think that what we need is not good news journalism. We need more thorough, dedicated journalism in which people listen.
From here going forward, we've got elections and all sorts happening in the next year or so. What are the key threats facing the country, do you reckon?
Well, of course, the interesting point is that we're probably going into an election next year, which is going to be the most hotly contested since 1994. That obviously shows the strength of our democracy, but it's also a challenge because the more hotly contested there are, the more it's likely that parties are going to be intolerant and that parties are going to try to use bully tactics against each other. And hopefully, I mean, it's really a holding thumbs hope, the process we're going through this week in remembering Madiba will remind people that political tolerance was a very important part of what he stood for. He was the man who went down to KwaZulu-Natal and said to the ANC people there, throw your weapons into the sea. This is about politics, this is about debating, it's not about fighting. And my great hope for next year, we've demonstrated, incidentally, one thing which a lot of us said at the time and a lot of people didn't believe. We're a strong society. We can get past something like the passing of a great man. Next year we've got to demonstrate that we can exercise the same political tolerance as Mandela encouraged when he was president.
In closing, one of his famous quotes is, "Politics is not for sissies." What will be the legacy of the statesman?
Well, I think the legacy will be that he showed, yes, politics isn't for sissies and he was a tough politician, but I think he told that the mark of a great politician is not to look at the immediate but to look at the longer term. He wasn't interested in what you could get out of the situation now. He was interested in how you built a legacy and how you built a nation. And I think that if more of us worried about the longer term and what we're trying to build in 10, 15, 20 years' time in the society and less about what worries us today, then that will be an enduring legacy.
Well, Professor Stephen Friedman, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a very entertaining and enlightening interview indeed. Thank you once again.
Thank you.